apologies. One, I arrived on a transatlantic flight yesterday and I was rewarded by that, by your country with a smack bang in the face with hay fever. So, apologies for the sniffing in the coffin. The other apologies I wanted to make is some of you have really dressed up. I notice suits, I notice ties. And here I am as a senior manager of ING in a lousy t-shirt. The t-shirt plays an important role in my story. Let me first of all introduce myself. I'm a manager of the global digital channels of Wholesale Bank. About 120 people reporting into me. I think 12 or 13 DevOps teams. And we're on the brink of going even further than DevOps to make you curious about the rest of my story. What is ING? Let me go back in history, and this plays a very important role in my story. At a certain moment in time, which was 2010, the moment that I was having my job interviews at ING to join, we were actually the biggest bank in the world. ING became so big because of many mergers, takeovers, more takeovers, more mergers. We were huge. But at the same time, we were becoming a monster. And it was the strategy of our former CEO, Jan Homme, to become so big. But the Crown Prince, Ralph Hamers, our current CEO, was already there. And he was already pulling some strings. And one of the strings he was trying to pull is to get back focus. And thank God for the global financial crisis, because ING had to be bailed out by the Dutch government. And in return, the European Commission said, you are simply too big. You are too big to fail. You must split up. You must become smaller. And that was exactly what Ralph Hamers wanted. So at the moment, we're not the biggest bank in the world anymore. We're number 23 or 24 or something like that. But we still have a pretty big global presence. The second part of Ralph Hamers' strategy was, and that plays a very important role in becoming a DevOps organization and going even beyond that, is that he said, we are not a bank anymore. We are an IT company with a banking license. And that is our strategy from now on. So the moment Ralph Hamers became our global CEO of the group, we were an IT company with a banking license. And that is why all our senior management, including Ralph Hamers or our global CIO Ron van Kemenade, if they give a presentation somewhere in the world, they wear this lousy t-shirt. Not a suit, a lousy t-shirt. This is one of my two slides. And this is the other one. My story is going to be this slide. And my story is going to be a journey with struggles. A journey with, oh, it's going well with my voice. A journey with personal struggles for me. And the story I'm going to share with you is my story, how I experienced these struggles. The journey started in 2010 when ING already was embarking on the path of becoming an IT company with a banking license. And basically the entire IT management was replaced with people with another focus. And the focus was not so much on the process anymore, but the focus was on IT skills and on HR skills. We wanted management up until the senior levels of our CIOs that had a background in engineering, that knew what they were talking about when they were making decisions about how to engineer and what sort of processes to implement to support the engineering. And I was a result of that. So I joined early 2011 when the first engineering culture was already emerging. Because Ralph Hamers saying we are an IT company with a banking license, that made something happen with the engineers. They were suddenly not suppliers of demand coming from the business anymore, but they were equal partners in shaping our company. They were sitting at the table with people from the business. There was no them and us anymore. There was more some sort of a culture of it's all of us together in it. And engineers discovered that they had power. And power with engineers tends to end up with something they love doing most, and that is engineering. So they started to feel the power to step away from only delivering what the business was asking from them, but also things that would help them in their work, which is basically the first step to our transition, and that is continuous integration and continuous delivery. Automate what you can automate, and automate even the automating of what you're doing. That was what happened. And when I joined ING in 2011, continuous delivery really emerged as something that is important for the company. It was not something that engineers were doing in back rooms anymore. It was something that everybody started talking about. But we still had a legacy. We still had the legacy of a huge company with people that didn't really adhere to an engineering culture, so something needed to happen. And that's when one of the first reorganizations happened within ING. And that reorganization focused on, okay, let's select people who can engineer. Let's get rid of the people, it is a bit blunt, but it happened. Let's get rid of those people who only think in processes, who only can produce PowerPoints or Word documents. Let's focus on people who can sit on the command line, who can actually write code and understand what they're doing, people who can automate. Angela mentioned this morning that there were two sorts of people. One sort was actually that sort of people. And the other sort of people that they had were the sort of people that you needed to take along on the journey of becoming engineers. Within ING, we did that as well, but to a certain extent. And we did it, and that's where my story started, because I joined in 11, and I discovered that engineers were doing cool stuff, but nobody was understanding its value. We started working Agile. We started working Scrum at the same moment. And it is very important that we were already embarking on that road of continuous delivery and continuous integration. Because without that, basically the order from the higher chain of command would have failed. Thy shall work Agile. We adopt Scrum as a way of working. It would have failed if we wouldn't have been able to continuously build, test, and deploy software to production or to the other environments. And what we did at that moment, I was working for a domestic bank in the Netherlands, where it all started. I got together with my colleague Danny Wijnand from the mobile teams, and my colleague Evelijn van Leeuwen from the internet banking teams. I was manager assisted channels at that moment. And we said, okay, we need to start leading by example. So basically what the three of us did, we learned everything about Maven, we learned everything about Jenkins, we learned everything about Nolio, because that was at that time our preferred tool for automated deployments. We learned everything. And then we started telling people about it, our business partners who had just been told, you're part of an IT company. And instead of treating us like people that they tell what to do, we were telling them about continuous delivery and continuous integration and the fact that it is so important for our new way of working that we should spend money on it. Their money, because it was still their money. We also discovered that, and that relates back to Angela's story, not everybody was on board. Not all engineers understood why it is important. They wanted to start working in Scrum teams and appoint Scrum masters and have daily stand-ups to work Agile without understanding that it would fail without continuous integration and continuous delivery. So the three of us started to educate all our engineers, at that time in domestic bank that were 2,500. We're training them on continuous delivery and continuous integration. We were leading by example. We were not telling them this is continuous integration and continuous delivery, thy shall do it. No, we were actually sitting behind our laptops, giving demos, showing them how to do it, showing them how cool it is. Thanks to that, let's say 50% of those engineers that still needed to be convinced of the fact that engineering is cool and that Word documents and Excel sheets are out, they moved along. But the rest was stuck. And it is very un-Dutch, and it is especially very non-ING to do that. But we decided to implement a reorg to get rid of them. It is not something that is at the heart of our culture. It is so opposite to our culture. But we couldn't take them along on a journey where they would be the dead horse that we would be pulling. So we laid off quite a few engineers, a couple of hundreds. And that was a harsh moment. It was a harsh moment because it doesn't fit with our Dutch culture. So I struggled with it. I struggled with the fact that the organization said, we are going to work agile. These are the consequences. But on the other hand, the cool thing about it was that the guys who were still there, it started bottom up. They started already in 2010. After Ralph Hamers saying, we are an IT company, they started bottom up doing all the cool stuff that engineers like to do. They embraced Agile and Scrum as a methodology because it supported the fact why that automation is so important. And instead of an organization saying, okay, we are going to change and this is the change and you get used to it, actually what the board of directors said when they told us go and do Agile, go and do Scrum, is that they translated what they heard on the shop floor. They heard the engineers say, we want this, this is cool. And basically what they said, well, let's put it in a PowerPoint and then it is official. So it's the engineers, all those cool engineers that did it. It is not our senior management, not our board of directors that came up with the idea of working Agile and Scrum. It was quite a struggle. It was not a struggle because of the engineers, it was a struggle because of the business. Our business partners were sitting in another building, another chain of command. They couldn't get used to the idea of working Agile. They couldn't get used to the idea that teams that a year before had been working on building cool screens with buttons and functionality were now automating stuff. There's no business value in automation, they thought. And that is where the education started. That is where Danny Wijnand, Evelijn and I started reaching out to our business partners and explained to them the investment we are making in the automation is going to pay itself back. And the proof of the pudding was our mobile app. We had a mobile app within ING the Netherlands, and it was crap. It was awful. The only thing you could do with it is log in, see what your account balance is, and see where the nearest ING retail office is. That's the only thing you could do. And they spent 2 years of work on that. Our board of directors wanted a new mobile app, exactly at the moment that we started working Agile. And that saved us, because the mobile app, within 6 months after starting to build the new one, was already in the App Store, was already being rated by clients. And the board of directors defined a roadmap for that mobile app, a roadmap of 2 years. At that moment in time, we need that functionality, and at that moment in time, we need that. They thought they knew it all. Board of directors doesn't know shit. Sorry, pardon the French. The client knows what is needed. And the clients told us something completely different than what they defined in the roadmap. And our teams in the mobile app were able to deliver that within a couple of weeks. Something very simple, an address book in the mobile app. So the people that you make regular payments to are already with their account number, their name, and et cetera, in your data. That was something that the board of directors thought was needed years after the app would have become a success. No, clients told us, we need it now. We want you to deliver it as soon as possible. And we did, thanks to Agile, thanks to the Agile way of working, thanks to being able to continuously test, build, integrate, and deploy new software to production. And within a couple of months, the mobile team was able to deploy a new version to production every week. Nobody saw the difference, but it is like a frog in a pan. It went smoothly, it went slowly, but it wasn't a big bang, but the clients were happy. We were getting rated excellent in the App Store. That supported the decision, okay, a bank of the future needs to work Agile, needs to be able to adapt very fast to market circumstances, but also to what the clients want. And we need to be able to listen to what the clients want. And Agile helped us in doing that. But there was a lot of education needed. And to be honest, once again, it was to our luck that the mobile app and its success bailed us out. But there was a success. The entire organization was convinced. Continuous delivery, continuous integration, it's cool. Agile, we need to do it. Now what is the next thing we're going to do? And the next thing was DevOps. We have a definition within ING of DevOps. And DevOps, I can best summarize in one word: trust. Trust between those who build the software and those who need to maintain it and keep it up and running. There is an expression, I've lived for 5 years in Australia. Maybe you still notice a bit of an Australian accent. Sorry about that. There is an expression in Australia, I think you know it as well here in the US, eat your own dog food. Eat your own dog food was the dogma for all our DevOps teams. There is no dev or ops anymore. You are one team, you're responsible for a mobile app or a channel application or whatever, and you do it together and you figure it out together. We couldn't have done that without continuous integration and continuous delivery. Why? Because having a SonarQube dashboard in front of you every morning during the stand-up and showing you what the software quality is, how your regression tests are either passing or failing, what the test coverage is that you have achieved with those tests, that builds up trust with those who are ultimately being called in the middle of the night if the app fails. But it was a culture change, because at that time we still had two separate organizations, Dev and Ops. I came from the Dev organization, and I had a colleague, Paul Jacobs, and Paul was responsible for the operations of my applications. And the way it worked is, if we wanted to go to production, we needed to go through an entire process in HP Service Center, but I also needed to get in front of Paul and explain to him what we had done to deserve that we could go to production. What quality criteria did we adhere to? And what was the result? He wanted to know, and without his approval, I could not go to production. And now we go to DevOps. I'm running out of time, and can talk about this for hours. The change to DevOps was, there was no Paul Jacobs for me anymore. It was myself. I needed to convince myself that I could go to production. Paul Jacobs was responsible for another DevOps department, and he needed to convince himself. Now, luckily, we both smoke, so once in a while we went outside and we said, I'm going to production next week with blah, 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 blah. I've done this, and these are the results, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? That's the only way we could pull each other through that process. Because suddenly being responsible for, well, eating your own dog food as a manager and making decisions, whoa, that was the biggest struggle in my career in this entire transition. And now we have gone one step beyond DevOps. And that is BizDevOps. BizDevOps started within ING the Netherlands, closely before the moment that I decided to take on a new responsibility within ING Wholesale Bank. And they're two different organizations. ING Wholesale Bank had just adopted Agile. Agile was hot there. Within domestic it wasn't hot anymore, it was something new, and that was BizDevOps. Why did we do that? We did that because still not everyone was eating his own dog food. If there was an incident in the middle of the night, both dev and ops engineers, and to be honest, I don't care whether somebody is a dev and an ops or an ops engineer anymore. The only reason why we still talk about dev and ops within ING is because there is a segregation of duty, and some people have another role than other people in the identity and access management systems, but not in their role description, not in the capabilities and the skills they have. But in the middle of the night, these guys are being called. But a business representative that came up with crap functionality that they implemented and causes an incident is not being called in the middle of the night. That was our primary reason to implement BizDevOps. Everybody is eating his own dog food. But there was a stronger argument that emerged over time. And that argument is, we went, and I hope I still have a couple of minutes, we looked at another company. And the other company we looked at was Spotify. Spotify had implemented a way of working based on tribes, squads, and chapters. All very cool terminology, but what does it mean? Basically, a squad is what we would call here a DevOps team, but a BizDevOps team. And a BizDevOps team can be 8 engineers and 1 customer journey expert, which is our new term for a product owner. Or a BizDevOps team, so a squad, can be 7 customer journey experts and 1 engineer. The difference is, and those are the 2 outer limits, a team comprising 7 business people and 1 engineer is a team that is investigating whether something is feasible. They are doing some sort of research and development based on an idea how to improve the experience for our customers. There's not a lot of engineering going on, but there's more discussion going on about would this be cool or would that be cool? Engineer, what do you think? Can you implement that? Another version, a team that has 1 customer journey expert and 7 or 8 or 9 engineers, they are building or extending something that is already in production or already going on. And in between that are many flavors. So a squad is a BizDevOps team. A chapter is something that doesn't really exist, but it is more a virtual group of people who have the same skill set. So customer journey experts, they are part of a chapter. Once in a while they get together and they talk about, the cool engineers we work with, blah, 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 things that we could do for our customers, interesting. but they work in squads. And a tribe is the overarching combination of lots of squads that are working with engineers and customer journey experts. We only have engineers and customer journey experts. Everything else is gone. Yes, there are managers. It squeaks. It doesn't work fully yet. Why? Because there are still two chains of command. The customer journey experts report to somebody else than the engineers. So we didn't do that, what we did with DevOps yet. But there will be a moment in time, because we have implemented the model from Spotify, but slowly but surely we have made it the ING model, which is different from the model Spotify. When we started shouting from the rooftops, we are going to implement BizDevOps and we're going to use the Spotify model for it, the CEO of Spotify responded, "Don't try this at home. It only works in Spotify." And that's true. And we found out that that is true. The Spotify model doesn't work for ING. We had to make our own adjustments and our own fine-tuning to the model. But we are working BizDevOps. Not yet in Wholesale Bank. That is coming in Q1 of next year. And the difference between that implementation and that of Domestic Bank is that in Domestic Bank, this was the only change that came from the top. Somebody at the top thought, wouldn't it be cool to be the next Spotify? Let's implement Spotify within ING. Within Wholesale Bank, we gradually are massaging people towards the idea, maybe it would be cool to implement that model as well. And we are doing that gradually, not in a big bang. And what we see at Wholesale, we're going to make it formalized in Q1 next year. But what we see here is that it works much better coming from the bottom than it does coming from the top. That was my story. Any questions?